This is Oppo's new top flagship, the Find X5 Pro. It brings a bunch of high-end features along with a hefty price tag. So does the Find X5 Pro have what it takes to compete with the best? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our full review. The Find X5 Pro is the sequel to last year's Find X3 Pro. The design is clearly similar, especially when it comes to the curves. You again get a camera bump that slopes into the back panel, although this time it brings a slightly more interesting slanted shape. We have the white model, which is made from ceramic, rather than the X3 Pro's glass. It's a bit heftier and should be more durable, especially when it comes to scratches. The back curves to meet the polished aluminum frame. Overall, it's a very premium look and feel. You'll also notice the Hasselblad branding on the backside. Oppo has continued the partnership that OnePlus had. And just like last year's models, the Find X5 Pro has IP68 rated protection against water and dust. On the front is a curved LTPO2 AMOLED display with a QHD resolution, Gorilla Glass Victus protection, and a fast 120Hz refresh rate. The high refresh rate makes movement on screen much smoother to the eye, and since this is LTPO, it's very adaptive. When you stop interacting with the display, the refresh rate will dial down to as low as 1 Hz in order to save energy. At 525 ppi, this display is very sharp. It's contrasty too, and supports both HDR10+ and 10-bit color. The colors can be very accurate too, depending on your color settings. The only real nitpick we have here is the max brightness. We measured up to 480 nits with the manual slider, and this can boost up to 760 nits in auto mode when in bright conditions. That's still good, but rivals at this price can achieve over 1,000. For audio, the Find X5 Pro has a stereo speaker setup, with the top speaker doubling as the earpiece. The speakers earned a very good rating in our loudness test, and the sound is great too, with pleasing vocals and nice overall clarity. For storage, the Find X5 Pro can come with 256 or 512 gigs on board. That's plenty, but it's not expandable. The interface of the Find X5 Pro is Oppo's new ColorOS 12, running on top of Android 12. It's nearly identical to the Android 11 version of ColorOS 12 that we saw on other devices. In ColorOS, you can customize the looks of many of the UI elements through the personalization options. Another Oppo feature is that you can cast your phone wirelessly to a Windows PC through Multi-Screen Connect, and access your phone's functions through the computer. You do get Android 12's privacy dashboard too, which organizes your permissions options into one easy-to-find spot. For biometrics, the Find X5 Pro has an under-display optical fingerprint reader. It's well-placed and reliable. And by holding down your finger on the reader, you can open up the Quick Launch menu for shortcuts. We also want to mention that the Find X5 Pro has excellent haptic feedback thanks to its X-axis linear motor. You can customize the vibrations and settings via a special feature called O-Haptics. The Find X5 Pro is a flagship through and through and brings the top-tier Android chipset, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. In contrast, the regular Find X5 has last year's Snapdragon 888. As expected, performance here on the Pro is excellent. Everything runs fast and smooth. This should be more than enough power for whatever you need to accomplish, including multitasking and heavy gaming. We should note that we did see some thermal throttling here, despite the phone's vapor chamber cooling system. In this respect, it's sort of middle of the road compared to the competition. The Find X5 Pro has a 5000 mAh battery, which is a bump up from the 4500 mAh battery that we saw on the X3 Pro. As a result, the Find X5 Pro was able to score a good 101-hour endurance rating in our battery tests, a significant improvement over the previous model. The Find X5 Pro has support for wireless charging and now 80-watt wired charging. However, it's actually slower than the charging on the Find X3 Pro, which could be due to Oppo now trying to better preserve the health of the battery. With the 80-watt adapter, we were able to charge the Find X5 Pro from 0 to almost full, 91% in half an hour. Onto the cameras. On the back, there's a 50-megapixel main camera, a 13-megapixel telephoto cam with 2x zoom, and a 50-megapixel ultra-wide camera. These are pretty much the same cameras we saw on the X3 Pro, except that the main cam now uses a fancy combo of lens-based stabilization and sensor shift stabilization. Also, the processing is improved thanks to a new custom Mara Silicon X NPU chip. Images from the main cam are likable with very good detail, balanced sharpening, lively colors, and wide dynamic range. The photos are quite expressive, but if you're into a more conservative look, these might not be up your alley. Portraits can be captured with the main camera or the telephoto. Subject separation is good either way, but the main cam shots are a bit higher in quality. In contrast, the zoomed portraits might sacrifice a little in image quality, but in our opinion they have a superior looking perspective. The telephoto has a 13 megapixel sensor, but its photos come out at 12. They're sharp and detailed with great colors and wide dynamic range. Our main nitpicks are that these do have a bit of visible noise, and competing flagships have a higher zoom level. The ultra-wide delivers some of the sharpest and most detailed images we've seen from this sort of camera. The colors are again punchy here, and dynamic range is also great. Since the ultra-wide has autofocus, it can be used to take close-up shots. These are great as well. There's also a macro mode, which will kick in automatically when you're close enough to a subject. This applies some digital zoom to the mix, so the perspective is even closer, but the photos aren't as sharp. In low light, the X5 Pro will automatically apply night mode processing to your photos. Nighttime shots from the main cam are among the best we've seen, with a ton of detail and excellent dynamic range. Highlights are well contained, and shadows are well developed. Our only nitpick is that some light sources tend to have an orangish color cast. Zooming at night doesn't give such great results though. Most of the time, the phone will resort to a digital crop from the main cam, which is softer and has extra sharpening applied to try and compensate. The ultra-wide camera's nighttime photos are pretty much as good as you can get from this sort of camera. There's excellent detail and wide dynamic range. Also, light sources have a more neutral color cast than you see from the main cam. Selfies come out at 32 megapixels and they aren't bad. These aren't the sharpest selfies around, but there's a good amount of detail, nice colors, and wide dynamic range. Also, the field of view is wider than many selfie cams, so you can fit more into the frame. The Find X5 Pro doesn't support 8K video recording for some reason, but the 4K videos from the main camera are superb. They have an excellent level of detail, balanced sharpening, and vivid colors. There's good contrast and dynamic range is wide. 4K clips from the telephoto cam also have respectable detail and are noise-free, while maintaining a pleasing color palette. However, the dynamic range is a bit limited when it comes to highlights, which can be blown out. The ultra-wide's 4K footage looks great. There's an exceptional level of detail for this sort of camera, and you get lively colors and excellent dynamic range. Electronic stabilization is always on and very effective. Pans are quite smooth and walking is stable. At the time of this review, our Find X5 Pro still doesn't support ultra night video, which should come via software update. But even so, nighttime footage from the main cam is respectably sharp and detailed, with good color saturation. The dynamic range is a bit limited when it comes to highlights though. The telephoto cam isn't as good at handling darkness, but it still can produce usable video. And the ultra-wide does a pretty decent job at recording at night. So that's the Oppo Find X5 Pro. It's priced to sit alongside the most expensive flagships you can buy, but it feels like it belongs there. All around, it's able to provide an excellent flagship-grade experience. Our only nitpicks are that the display doesn't get quite as bright as the competition's, and the telephoto 2x zoom doesn't have quite as much reach as what you can find elsewhere. But these things are hardly deal breakers, and if you're looking for a nice alternative to the more popular flagship phones, the Find X5 Pro is worth recommending. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.